Okay, I am now recording again.
I am recording. Well, I have been recording.
Right.
I am reacting to the fact that you are now recording.
And I am responding to your reaction. Okay. That will actually probably help quite a bit. I'm Tom Dickinson.
And I'm Lewis Midas.
And this is The Cloister Room,
a podcast about Doctor Who and other things.
So I just finished watching Timelash, actually.
I finished it about an hour ago. I have to say, I really like the Sixth Doctor.
Okay, but not the story?
Well, no. Well, I mean, no, just this story just sort of reminded me how much I like the Sixth Doctor. And you know what I really like? And this is just another thing that has nothing to do with the episode. I really like the opening theme that they were using at the time, like that version of the theme. I think it's my favorite version.
That's fine.
Okay, anyway.
That's all right.
As far as the episode itself is concerned, I don't know how I felt about it. I kind of liked it, but I don't know.
Yeah, there were parts of it that I actually didn't think were horrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I was expecting, like, this horrible thing because it's so disliked. I think we've occasionally mentioned the Mighty 200 poll, which Doctor Who magazine did last year. I think this was shortly after the airing of Planet of the Dead, in which people voted on their favorite to least favorite stories. And
yes.
I think Timelash was number 199.
What was 200?
Well, that's the Twin Dilemma.
Oh, okay.
Also with the Sixth Doctor.
Oh, the poor Sixth Doctor. He just got all the crappy stories.
And the Twin Dilemma is notable because it was right after Caves of Androzani, which was number 1.
Huh.
So you go from Caves of Androzani, which is considered the best one, to Twin Dilemma, which is considered the worst one. And Twin Dilemma I actually couldn't sit through, mostly because I was just really bored. And there were parts of this that I was incredibly bored by. Like, I kind of sort of stopped caring all that much by the end of the first episode.
Yeah, I didn't really care about much of the things that were going on. And to be honest, I don't think I ever really connected with any of the characters. They were just kind of there.
I think that's because the acting was not all that great.
Yeah.
And there's no one that stands out as a particularly memorable character. I mean, You get various different... people get killed off, and you're like, oh, okay, that one's gone.
I noticed a bit of, not necessarily wibbly-wobbly stuff, but kind of... it was interesting how they had that android being sent back in time. Or was it android cyborg? No, not cyborg. Android.
What?
Was it they had like was it like, oh, there's that we saw an android on fire. Was that you?
Oh, yes, exactly.
So it was like a tiny bit of wibbly wobbly, although not at all important to the story, really.
Right, but then you also have like the Loch Ness Monster.
Yeah.
And then you have H.G. Wells.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a little bit of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey there.
That's true.
I guess. I actually kind of liked Herbert.
Yeah, he's a pretty cool dude.
I think he was one of the more memorable parts of the story.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and I mean, I do also like the Sixth Doctor, but there were parts of this story that really bothered me, like, especially the beginning. At the beginning of the story, just him and Perry just bickering and, like, being absolutely horrible to one another. And then, like, the Perry's complaining, and then the Doctor saying, well, then, maybe I'll just take you home. And then Perry starts whimpering. She's like, oh, no, don't do that. Anything but that. And I'm like, okay, you two need to, like... couples counseling or something. Like, this is seriously not a healthy relationship.
That's true. Yeah, that was kind of a chore to sit through. Actually, something I noticed about Perry, or didn't notice about Perry, was that her accent seemed to be much more tolerable. And I don't know if that was just because she got better at it or I just stopped noticing. But I couldn't actually detect any times where she sounded not American.
Yeah, I think she was better here than she has been in other stories I've seen her in. It probably has a lot to do with practice, I guess.
Practice makes perfect.
Yeah. Funny how, like, when you're experienced at doing something, you get better at it. Which is why you, like, don't take someone who has no knowledge of the American accent and put them in as an American character. Yeah, the character of Perry, just in general, I really don't care that much about Perry. Except, actually, you've never seen Trial of a Time Lord, have you?
No, I haven't.
Well, in Trial of a Time Lord, at the beginning of the story, or rather, Trial of a Time Lord is kind of timey-wimey where things take place out of order, but at the earliest chronological part of Trial of a Time Lord, there's like a gap between that and what had come before. So by that point, the Sixth Doctor and Perry they've been to couples counseling, I guess, or something like that. I don't know. They're better getting along.
Okay.
So that's a little bit more interesting to me than this Perry, who's just like always at odds with the Doctor, doesn't seem to want to be there at all until the Doctor threatens to take her back, and then she's absolutely dismayed at the prospect. Yeah, I thought I'm just going to call him Borat. I'm just going to call him Borat, okay? I thought Borat's mask was horrible.
Yeah.
Like, it was really not very good at all. Mm-hmm. I think it was inconsistent from scene to scene. Am I wrong about that?
I think I'd have to watch it again, but I think you might be right. I think I did see some changes.
Like, specifically in, like, the way the non-human part sits on his face. Mm-hmm. Or something about the eye as well.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That might have been lighting, though.
Could have been. I don't know. It's just not it doesn't look very good.
No.
I'm not even really sure what it's supposed to look like.
I'm not sure what the message of this story was supposed to be. Was it that ugly people can't have what they want?
You know, I was thinking that too. That's the climax of the story is just the Doctor berating Borat for being ugly and like appealing to his body image issues to destroy him. Like, it's horrible.
Yeah, that was something I noticed, and I didn't know how to take that.
It just doesn't seem very, very Doctor to me.
No.
I don't know.
Yeah, I found that a bit strange. But, I don't know. Dude was pretty ugly.
True. He was. And, like, ugly guys always, like, want to kidnap Perry and make her their bride.
Yeah, what's up with that?
I don't know. It's like, okay, it's like, I mean, there's a minimum level of attractiveness for all Doctor Who companions, pretty much. So,
yeah.
Like, the Doctor Who companions are going to be fairly good-looking people. But, like, Perry in particular seems to get kidnapped and forced into marital bliss with ugly creatures. Like, Shara's Jack from Caves of Androzani and here, and I have two examples, so that makes it true.
Were there any... Yeah, did that happen with any other companions?
It must have.
Yeah, probably.
I cannot lay claim to having seen every episode of Doctor Who, so... Oh, speaking of which, in case you were wondering, because I know you have very little experience of the Third Doctor.
Oh, yeah.
There was no story to which this is a sequel.
Okay.
There wasn't an episode. Like, all the things that are referred to with the Third Doctor in this story never happened on screen.
Okay. I was, in fact, wondering about that, so I'm glad you cleared that up.
Yeah, I'm glad I cleared that up, too.
Yeah, and I saw all the references they were making to the Third Doctor, and so I actually was trying to read the Wikipedia article while watching the episode to see if I could find out if it was in fact a sequel to something, and I couldn't, so I just kind of gave up. But yes, I'm glad you cleared that up there, because I was a-wondering.
I mean, I guess it's kind of cool that they do that. I mean, refer to past adventures of the Doctor. But I mean, it does tend to confuse people, I suppose. I mean, I was wondering whether it was one that I hadn't seen, and then I did the Wikipedia thing while I wasn't watching. And so, I due to my clear and focused state, I was able to discern the truth.
Excellent.
But I mean, back in the day when Wikipedia didn't exist, and I mean, you would have to actually purchase an episode guide or something, I have to wonder whether people had the impression, wait a second, did I miss a Third Doctor episode? Or something like that. I don't know. Now I'm just imagining what people would have thought back in the day, and that's really interesting podcasting there. Yeah.
It's hard to imagine life without Wikipedia.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for us. I mean, many Doctor Who podcasters were once Doctor Who fans who didn't have Wikipedia, and they had books. They had books, Lewis.
Wow. How analog.
Yeah, have you read Patton Oswalt's thing in Wired?
No.
He wrote an article on that, but I'm not going to draw us off on another tangent.
Okay.
Other than just to mention that Patton Oswalt did an article in Wired. I forget what it was called, but it has pictures of him like hiking or something. And he talks about how nerd culture has changed now that absolutely everything is available to absolutely anyone who wants it as soon as they want it.
Huh.
As opposed to back in the day when you would have to put in the effort to become incredibly knowledgeable on the topic. Now you can just do it in an afternoon.
That's interesting. Huh.
But
Yeah.
Timelash.
Yeah. I can't think of anything else that really stuck out to me.
Yeah, I can't remember any of the characters' names.
No, me neither.
Other than Borat. I did think the androids were really dumb.
Yeah, they had kind of this musical voice thingy going on.
And I don't get the beekeepers. I don't understand why the guards were beekeepers.
Yeah, I don't really, I don't know. Yeah, that was kind of weird. But yeah, what was with those androids? They were all blue.
What purpose did they serve, really?
I don't know.
Like, in the like grand scheme of everything that goes on in the society, like, what is their role versus the role of the beekeepers?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm just really confused.
But yeah, so overall,
I'd go with There were parts of it that I enjoyed. I will agree that it is somewhat enjoyable in some parts, but I don't agree with the people who think it's the worst Doctor Who story ever.
Now, what would you consider the worst Doctor Who story ever to be?
Out of the ones I've seen?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, man. I feel like I should just say Amy's Choice. Because even though that's not true, it would, I don't know. I would have to say I think that parts of the Doctor Who that I think I've enjoyed least was parts of The Key to Time, which was the season-long story arc with the Fourth Doctor and Romana 1.
Oh, okay.
I just think that got boring and repetitive, and yeah, I'm not a huge fan of The Key to Time.
Okay.
But, actually, I would have to say The Twin Dilemma is probably my least favorite, because I haven't been able to sit through it in its entirety. I just got so bored, and I was like, I'm going to go do something else.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, I almost want to see it now.
Maybe someday.
Or maybe I don't.
Well, I mean, it's not like Star Wars Holiday Special bad. It's never like, oh my god, it hurts. I don't think Doctor Who has ever gotten to that level. Although some people will disagree and say that the end of time is that, or various.
Really,
people who hate on Russell T Davies hate on Russell T Davies a lot, and hate his finales. Think the end of time, the Sound of Drums / Last of the Time Lords. They just hate those. So yeah, and Journey's End. I mean,
I like Journey's End.
Me too. I mean, I wrote an impassioned review on Behind the Sofa of Journey's End, which I think was very well reasoned and well thought out. And people are like, nope, you're wrong. And I'm like, but different people like different things, and I mean, can't we all just get nope, you're wrong. So much hate.
That's how it is.
Yeah. Which is why I don't go to, like, forums. Like, have you ever been to Gallifrey Base?
No.
I don't. It is like a hate-filled place. Just different people hating each other for different reasons.
Wow. Sounds like a barrel of laughs.
Of like hateful laughs. Like in Timelash, when character whose name I don't remember is about to throw the Doctor into the Timelash, and he says, "Well, Doctor, unpleasant trip," and then laughs as though it's the funniest thing anyone's ever said. Unpleasant trip.
I remember that now.
And I'm like, oh my god. That's like not even anything. I mean, I can get you sort of saying that and then smirking. But like, yes, get it? Unpleasant trip, because you might sometimes say pleasant trip to a person. And I'm not saying that. And that's the funny part. Yeah, and that's Timelash. That's Timelash right there. We talked about this before on the podcast.
Yes.
I said I didn't think there was much more you could get out of the world of Tron. I felt like the story was so straightforward and simple that there was no need for a sequel. Mm-hmm. And, you know, if I were the kind of person who rates movies on a numerical scale, I'd give Tron maybe like a 6.5 or a 7.
Okay.
And I was expecting, based on everything I knew about Tron Legacy, that it would end up being maybe a 6. But it might go as low as, say, 4 if it was particularly dire. But seeing the movie, I would have to say that the rating I would give it, 10 out of 10.
Really?
I think there is almost nothing about Tron Legacy that I do not like.
Yeah. The original was just... It was kind of strange. What I like about Tron Legacy is how... it just makes so much sense, I guess. Because, you know, Kevin Flynn got into the grid and, you know, he got in, got out, and then he was, like, inspired by that experience to build, you know, a world in there in which people could actually go and, I don't know, live. I liked that idea. I like the idea that, you know, it's like, in there's our destiny. It's like, oh, it's so awesome.
Yeah. I like that too. I'm a little bit afraid to talk about how much I like this movie because I'm afraid people are going to think I'm crazy. Because I liked this movie so much. I think it was so great. I think it was just like the greatest thing. First of all, I actually didn't really like it that much until the scene where Sam Flynn, I just call him Old Man Voice, that's just my name for him, where Old Man Voice meets the real Jeff Bridges, meets the real Flynn, the old Flynn, and then he's explaining all of this stuff about how he and Clue and Tron created this world, and then it was a paradise, and I'm like, wow, this is incredibly mythic.
Yeah.
You've got this other being who is an aspect of Flynn who turns against him, and they sort of battle, and then clashing. Ooh, I'm waving my arms, Lewis. But yeah, and I got way into that, and then it's like, oh, and then these things, I don't know how much I want to say because, well, it's been out in theaters for a while.
Yeah.
I guess I can say this much. Like, there are these creatures that have manifested within the grid that he didn't create, but, like, just the ideal conditions for them to exist sort of happened. So they just popped into existence, and then they're like, oh, he's like, oh my god, these are the greatest things ever. And then Clue feels betrayed, so he's like, what? I thought we were going to make the perfect system. Yeah. And then, no, I get so excited. Like, I was like, oh man, this is so cool.
Yeah.
And then from there, I think the movie just only continued to get better and better when you go to this bizarre place where Michael Sheen is like some kind of David Bowie ripoff.
Yes.
And then, I just loved everything. Yeah. Like, it gets weirder, too. Like, I like the weirdness of the aesthetics of everything, like the guy with the visor over his head with the funny-shaped ears.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyhow, I'm going to stop.
I think the scenes in the end-of-line club were possibly my favorite. For a number of reasons. One was the Daft Punk cameo, which I just loved.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was good.
I really enjoyed that, and I liked, and the fight scene in there was particularly awesome.
Yeah,
and I thought it was really cool how it was set to how Daft Punk was just kind of rocking out. While they
of course.
That scene in particular stood out to me as being just so well executed. I just really liked that.
Yeah, and I think it was well executed, not just in the sense that it was competently executed. I think it was even artfully executed.
Yeah.
I don't like big empty action sequences, but like I feel like this action sequence was very much, I guess you'd say it was about something because there are very personal stakes in all directions. And even though they're largely fighting against these faceless opponents, a large part of it is, I think, I was expecting the film to just be like this empty special effects and action thing that isn't very character-driven. But I think it's incredibly character-driven. Yeah. And I think the original Tron was more of just an empty special effects showcase. Yeah. Not that it's completely empty.
Right. And I mean, I liked the original Tron, but there wasn't a whole lot of character development at all. It was really kind of an action-y type thing. But yeah, no. And I really like Jeff Bridges' performance in in Tron Legacy.
I liked both of his performances.
Yeah, that's true.
I even thought the CG Jeff Bridges was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I've heard that criticized.
Really?
People say it doesn't look very good.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this is something that my roommates discussed when we went to see it. What we concluded was that it was probably due to the face itself. The CG face didn't look as animated as it should have been, I guess. And I think that's really because they were doing motion capture on, Jeff Bridges, who is 50 or 60, I don't know. And so he doesn't really have the same kind of expressions that a young actor would. So his facial movements are probably not as they're of an old man. So I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do with that. But I was actually I don't know, I was pretty impressed with the CG Jeff Bridges, and actually
it's a computer program, so it doesn't necessarily have to look like a real person. It should look like a slightly not 100% awesome copy of Jeff Bridges.
Exactly. So it actually kind of fit, I think. I think that was really good.
I also liked that the movie was vaguely about issues that actually have real software ramifications. Like it's about openness versus closedness. And that's a real thing, and the way it's treated in the film isn't necessarily 100% meaningful. I like the idea that these beings in our computer want the real world to be open.
Mm-hmm.
I liked the characters. I liked the things that happened. At the beginning, I was a little skeptical because as soon as he got into the computer world, it seemed like the exact same things that had happened in Tron were happening again in the same order, but for different reasons. Like, first he gets into this fight, and then he gets into the light cycles, and then he escapes through the light cycles. Mm-hmm. But then it sort of diverged, and my problems sort of disappeared.
Yeah. I want to say that was done for the benefit of people who hadn't seen the original, so that they would sort of have the same kind of perspective of the world that someone who saw the original would.
Yeah, good point.
And it also sort of drew a nice parallel, I guess, between the original and the sequel. So there was sort of a connection. You sort of felt like, okay, this is kind of the same deal. And also, it was just, I like the idea of how the world has of how the grid had changed.
Well, it's a different grid.
Well, okay, that's true. Yeah, technically it is. And I mean, you could say like, oh, well, why are these light cycles, how come they're not, moving at 90-degree angles? But, it just kind of makes sense because you'd expect a system like that to evolve and get better. And so that's clearly what happened. It's just it's an upgrade. It's an update.
That's true, but on the other hand, this sounds kind of crazy. I actually like the original light cycle sequence better.
Okay.
I think the original light cycle sequence is more exciting.
Huh.
The sharp angles of the original light cycle I keep saying original light cycle sequence. But the sharp angles in Tron, in the original Tron, are more threatening. Like, all of a sudden, you think you know where this is going, but it's going to make a complete sharp turn. Whereas with these, they turn more like real vehicles, so you can sort of see, all right, he's beginning to turn, and he's going to continue to turn, so I can see that and turn with him. Whereas, I mean, the turns in Tron just sort of come out of nowhere.
That's true. I hadn't thought of it that way. Huh.
In Tron Legacy, there is more opportunity to avoid hitting the wall that's created.
That's true.
Because it's on a 3D plane rather than a 2D... Sorry, it's on a 3D area rather than a 2D plane.
That's true. Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, actually, that it was sort of more 3D. But yeah, it complicated things, and I was actually having trouble following it because I couldn't quite see where everything was. Like in the original sequence, in the original movie, it was very easy to follow, whereas this one there was a lot more going on, and I think that was due to the more complex environment. Yeah,
it's a little too complex in my opinion, but
yeah.
I mean that was one of the few things that I wasn't 100% on board with. Another thing that I wasn't 100% on board with was the way the character of Tron is handled in the movie.
Okay.
It's a little... This would be a spoiler, so I'm not going to say much about it, but the character of Tron plays a role, but not a very big role, and it's a little bit confusing. Mm-hmm. To me, at least. I don't know.
No, I would agree with that. And I feel... See, I would say he was handled that way in order so that there could be a sequel.
I think there probably is going to be a sequel, too.
Yeah.
Because I believe it did well at the box office.
Right. Yeah, I think it did, too. So, yeah, I would say there probably will be a sequel, and I would definitely go see it.
Yeah, I mean, me too. Because, like, as I said before, the original Tron was so straightforward that I didn't think any sort of sequel was necessary. Mm-hmm. But this sort of introduces a lot more depth into the world where I want to know more about what Kevin Flynn's plans were to revolutionize the real world using this world. I want to know more about what Sam Flynn's plans are to do now that he's done what he's done in this movie.
Right.
I mean, there's an animated miniseries that's being made that tells what happened between Tron and Tron Legacy in the world of the Grid. And I mean, that sounds interesting to me too.
Yeah.
This movie sort of like blew that world wide open in terms of how interesting it was for me anyway.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with that. I think it did add a lot and sort of opened up a lot of possibilities for things you could do and just different stories you could tell with it, I guess. So yeah, I'm looking forward to see what they do.
Now, did you know that the writers of the movie were writers from Lost?
I did know that, yes.
You know, while I was watching the movie, especially the scene where Jeff Bridges is explaining the background, he's explaining the things that happened between Tron and Tron Legacy. That all seemed very Lost to me.
Yeah.
It seemed very similar to the episode in season 6, in fact, where you learn about Jacob and the Man in Black.
Oh, yeah. It does have that same sort of feel.
In like the mythic, epic quality of it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's also it's a personal story about like different people having grudges and disagreements and things like that.
Yeah.
As many myths are.
Yes.
But yeah. I really liked this movie too much. I don't know. Maybe in a couple months I'm going to look back and I'm like, geez, how did I like that movie that much? But yeah, I just thought it was great.
Yeah.
I think watching this movie actually also might have improved the original for me in that there's a central absurdity to the premise of Tron.
Yeah.
That a person could go inside of a computer and interact with files as though they were people.
Uh-huh.
And Tron tries to justify this through fake science.
Yeah.
Whereas Tron Legacy is really a fantasy film, I think.
Yes.
It even has, like, elves. I think of the creatures that Jeff Bridges is so obsessed with. I think of those as, like, they're very much like, you know, fantasy elves or something.
That's true.
So I now think of Tron as a fantasy franchise rather than a science fiction franchise, and I think that will improve the original movie in my estimation.
Yeah, well, and it seemed like the original movie was trying very hard to draw parallels between what was happening in the film, their representations of, you know, the characters, the programs as, you know, people, and trying to draw strong parallels between those things and the way computers work, and it just came off as being kind of silly, and it didn't make a whole lot of sense, certainly for individuals who are knowledgeable with how computers actually work.
Well, I think the metaphor there was that a program was an extension of the will of the user who programmed it.
Okay. Which
might make sense in a very simplistic 1980s computer culture.
That's true.
Pre-internet.
Well, that's the thing is, I think when this movie was released, not many people knew what computers were, even.
Right.
I mean, they had kind of a general understanding, but not really a whole very strong understanding. But what I would say about Tron Legacy is that they pretty much ignored all of that.
Yeah.
And I think that was the right way to go about it.
Well, they didn't entirely ignore it because it's sort of built into the whole relationship between Flynn and Clue.
Oh, that's true.
Instead of ignoring it, they sort of took the same basic idea but did an entirely different sort of thing with it. Mm-hmm. He's like part of me, and then, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that bothered me about the original was they tried so very hard to throw in things like, oh, it's an I.O. tower. Mm-hmm. Like, just, you don't have to say that. Please don't do that.
Well, actually, you know, now that I think of it, in Tron, the computer system he's going into is a computer system that exists. It's the computer system of this computer software programming firm, Encom.
Yeah.
Whereas in Tron Legacy, the computer that they're in is not a functional computer. It's not a computer that exists to perform functions. It's a computer that exists to support the world that's inside of it.
That's true.
Like in Tron, the world is a byproduct of the functions that the computer is performing. Whereas in Tron Legacy, the world is just a thing, is the function of the computer.
That's a good point. I hadn't thought of it in those terms, but yes. So you would expect it to be a bit more, I guess, independent.
Yeah. And I think by the time we're talking about that means we've discussed the film for too long.
Yeah. Probably.
So that about wraps it up for another episode of the Cloister Room.
Indeed.
And you've been listening to it. For whatever reason. That's between you and your God. Lewis.
Yes.
How do you think people should contact us? What do you think is the best way?
I'm going to say email.
Email?
Yeah, it's been around for the longest.
Yeah, I mean, email's not going anywhere. And you know what? Our email isn't going anywhere either. It's still going to be thecloisterroom@gmail.com. So if that's the best way, then would you say that commenting on the website is number 2?
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
So commenting on thecloisterroom.com, not the best way, but still a good way. I mean, it's a great way, but it's just not as good as email. Twitter's an all right way.
It's pretty decent. It's a very young medium.
It's zeitgeisty. And, it has the benefit there are 3 entirely different ways you can do it.
Indeed.
Like, there's the Cloister Room, at the Cloister Room. But then there's my Twitter, which is at T. Dickinson.
Yeah. And there's my Twitter, which is at MilesBelly.
And that's just like 3 completely different Twitter accounts.
Yeah.
Still, number 1 is email, number 2 is comments. Twitter is number 3, but there are 3, so that's like 9. Okay.
And if you wanted, you do an @reply to all 3 accounts.
There wouldn't be very many characters left for you to say what you had to say.
Yeah.
But if you just wanted to say hi, that would certainly be acceptable.
And we enjoy salutations. I'm going to say that.
So yeah, those are the ways you can contact us.
Yeah.
Do it.
Please.
Go for it. What's stopping you? And also, be sure to tune in next week for another exciting episode of The Cloister Room, where we'll be talking about Doctor Who and probably other things.
Indeed.
Until then, I've been Tom Dickinson.
And I've been Lewis Midas.
Goodbye to you.
See ya.
And then one day, I got in.